Hi guys, Bonita here. I've been promising in several videos that I would talk a little bit about how to read the technique so that it can become practical in the studio. So whether you're a student or a professional, if you're a professional, you're still always a student. We're always trying to learn more and understand more. So we're always a student. And many times we have students who do look at the book and do try to read the book, and they find certain things very, very confusing, and it's unhelpful. And also in teacher training classes, a lot of times it's a very boring topic for many teachers. They go, oh, the dusty old book, and that's outdated, that we do modern things. It's actually not true, and I find the longer I teach and the more in depth that I get into it, the more I go back to the solid technique and the amazement that I have at how this was figured out and how it still works and will always work for two bodies dancing together. So things may change, fashions may change. We're at a point now where some things are not. Our frames are much larger and more open, which I think is very beautiful, but there are some people carrying this to the extreme to where the arms are flattening out, where some of the men are not even holding the lady anymore. Our elbows are only so wide. They have to be as wide as they can be, but they still have to accommodate a lady in the front of the man. She cannot be trapped on his right side. But these are some of the things that can go too far, where the women are so far over there that her arm may be straight, she may be hanging out over the edge. So we have to find a way to let things evolve without going crazy. We still have two bodies dancing together. They can only accomplish a certain amount of turn and maintain the position. And the foot positions and so on that are in the technique help us to make things work, no matter how we want to style it. One of the other things that's going on is this desire today to progress and to progress on everything. And not every action is a progressive action. So if you have too much of this desire to progress, you will ignore the technique, because the proper foot positions that give us a good body position and a moment of stillness will be destroyed. So we have to be careful. And I know all about dry technique classes. If you go into a school and you need to take the staff through, let's say, the syllabus of bronze, or give them all their bronze, silver, and gold, then you have to just go through the steps and the combinations and so on. Or maybe you have to go through foot positions and all this and try to get all this information into people. Not the best way to learn. And if you're a student, you want to use that technique book as a reference. So what I want to do today, so that we don't become boring and get into a lot of things that we can't see the practical advantage of, is just take a couple of movements and talk about why the foot position and the alignment is so important for affecting the body position, the relationship with the partner. I won't talk much about the Latin. Donnie Burns is writing a new Latin book, so we'll see how that comes out. There may be much more detail. We have Wally Laird's book, and we also have the Imperial books on the Latin. And the Latin does not have as many, let's say, intricacies as far as the concern of alignment, pointing alignments, and amounts of turn and so on. The amounts of turn are much more flexible. So there's a difference in the two, and that's a whole different topic. But since this new book is coming out, we'll just leave that on the side. So what I've decided to do is narrow it down to a couple of figures where the proper foot position and alignment makes a huge difference on what happens on the next step and what happens to our shape, no matter what kind of a shape, a really modern, large, open shape, or more traditional shape, which is where we're going with the bigger shapes, does not affect the position of the foot and the alignment, which will determine where your spine is going and what your relationship to your partner is. So specifically have chosen the end of the weave in waltz when it ends in promenade, and that's an outside change. And also we have the same thing going on if we're dancing in gold, the Contra Check, which has a promenade exit. And also step one in every tango promenade. All these steps are to the side. So today we'll just talk about foot position, and then we'll talk a little bit about alignment and movement. So let's say we're dancing our weave ending in promenade, or we're dancing simply the outside change, and we want to end it in promenade. The common fault, and I see it also in in teachers, and so many times with a lady, unless she has a routine, she has a difficult time following whether it's a promenade exit or whether she needs to remain facing the man for him to step outside partner. The thing is that if the position of the foot is wrong for what you want, you're going to put your partner's body in the wrong position because of where your spine is. So the step that we're talking about, that step into promenade on the man's left foot and the lady's right foot, is side. It's diagonal wall, and that tells us that our body and our foot are diagonal wall. And for the lady, it's diagonal center. Moving along the line of dance, so the spine is moving sideways. So this is another point of confusion. I've seen sometimes the professionals coming back from a dance camp, and they've been hearing some things which are correct things in many movements, but they don't understand it deeply enough. So they've heard one of the things we sometimes are saying: there's no side steps in ballroom dancing. Now understand what the point of that is. For instance, reverse turn, natural turn, any kind of turn. We're going to swing through. We're going to swing our leg forward. We're going to swing our body forward, but there will be turn. The way the technique is written, the position of the foot at the end of the turn is when it was written in the technique. So that's to prevent people from stepping forward, doing a hard swivel and directly taking a side step. But in this case, we're, let's say, coming out of a Contra Check into promenade, or coming out of the outside change in promenade, that actually is a side step. That is a true side step. We can address the other issue of how to swing forward to become side later. So my spine as man, if I take that step forward or diagonally forward or side and slightly forward, and most of all, I feel with my students and with the people I'm seeing in competition, they're taking that step very strongly diagonally forward as man. So when the lady does go to promenade, she ends up twisting and opening too far, and there's a big lump in the shoulder as both partners struggle to get their foot through. So when the man places his foot side diagonally wall, so then we have alignment and also we have the foot position. My spine has moved back enough for my woman's body to come forward, and now our spines are moving sideways in that promenade. And what we have then is we have a beautiful moment of stillness, and we have the ability to keep our frame and our relationship to our partner. So many times what we may hear on the lessons is don't open up too much, but the foot position and the alignment itself will actually correct that problem. And it's not so much necessarily that people have a bad habit. I find that when I teach this figure, inevitably the men will want to turn their body and go with their foot. And when they turn their body going with their foot, instead of taking that side step, so now my body was between the wall there and the diagonal wall, so my body doesn't really have to do much to be there. The moment though that I do this, my foot becomes forward, my shoulder is in my girl's space, and it's just natural. We want to go where we're looking. So I have to get used to this feeling of looking in promenade, moving sideways, and leaving the girl alone. So I know I'm harping on this, but this is a huge, huge issue, and you can save yourself a lot of money in lessons if you just understand that and try to apply it and try to break the habit, which you'll get into the habit almost immediately. And the same thing for the lady. If she peels off and she goes forward, now we have a bad shoulder line. But most of the time, she opens her head to promenade and she's completely pummeled by her partner. So I'm trying to limit it to a number of steps that are in the syllabus. The Contra Check, which ends in promenade, both partners are putting the foot to the side. Lady DC and gentleman DW. We have the very same thing when we dance the outside change to promenade. And step one of all your tango promenades are also the same way they are. Side in promenade. So there's not an opening, doing the man right now, and stepping forward, or for the lady. So again, this is heard many times on your lessons. Don't open up too much. Put the foot in the right position. Realize you are moving, the spine is moving sideways, and you're moving along the line of dance. These are other terminologies we can talk about. Again, we see that a lot in tango. Or we have an alignment. Alignment meaning where is the foot pointing in the room. Doesn't refer to the body, refers to the foot, but that statement is made moving along the line of dance. Now I do know some other adjudicators and really high-level dancers and coaches that don't like the way the technique is written. I've heard people say they think that the CBM and CBMP are confusing. I don't personally think they are. I think it's well understood, or that the way things are written. But if you understand how to read it, and if you can understand a few core principles, you can really understand how to go back and look and say, oh, okay, we can see I'm having problems with this. My foot's in the wrong position. That's causing my spine to move into my partner's space. Let me just try to fix that. So I was thinking I may cover more types of promenades. There are many, many times in promenade, depending what action we're doing, where one partner is moving on a diagonal and one partner is moving sideways. And that's very important for the next step out, not to be crowded and not to be twisted. But I think it's too much for one time. So today we're just looking at outside change ended in promenade. We're looking at the school figure for the Contra Check ended in promenade, and step one of the promenade in tango, in which case both partners have the natural opposite, as we would say, placing the foot sideways, pointing on those diagonals. And we don't say pointing because our body and our feet are matching, but you can save many lessons if you can just do that one discipline. And I'm amazed as I go on many, many years of teaching how much I can find that I can correct simply by getting my students or other teachers to be disciplined with where they're putting their feet. When I studied for my exams back in my early 20s, I had very good coaches, but we spent most of our lesson time actually developing the dancing, which is as it should be, and I did a lot of the study on my own, but I didn't really go in depth to really fully understanding what was happening. And you won't until you start teaching it. Or if you have a partner, and of course when I was starting, I had students that were starting at the beginning, mostly doing American style and social dancing. So even for the staff, when I was training the staff, they were all coming through bronze and silver and not doing international, not doing Latin. So I didn't have as many opportunities. So today, many times people move here and they'll be taking over other people's students who already dance, who may be advanced, who are already competing, and they may already be doing international levels and advanced dancing. But if you're starting out in a school where you don't have that opportunity, you're not going to learn it in depth unless you have someone to dance it with or to teach it to. So if you're a student and you're dancing with your pro partner or you're dancing with your amateur partner, it would help you tremendously to understand the technique and not simply wait on the lesson to have everything corrected. So use that book as a reference, and if you have a question, hopefully you can bring it to your teacher and ask, why does it say this, and what does that mean, and why is that important? Does this still work? And yes, it does. It still works, no matter how big you make the top line. There's certain amounts of turn that work, certain foot placements that will help you a lot. And remember, not every figure is a progressive figure. Some figures are rotary figures, and some figures have that moment of stillness before they move on. So I hope that wasn't too dry. I'm a dance nerd myself, and I love the technique, and I love the fact that it always comes alive new for me as I'm teaching, when I see how much sometimes these simple things can correct a lot of faults.